Hey guys, welcome back to our online series that we're doing called Power. Hope you checked out last week's message. If you haven't, go check that out. But today we're going to be looking at the power of the name of Jesus. We're going to see that the name of Jesus displaces the darkness. When I was growing up as a kid, my brother and I had a game that we would play. He was several years older than me, and we had a basement at our house, and our basement had quite a few things in it. And we would go downstairs and we would cut off all the lights, and we would then try to make it across our basement without making any noise, kind of like we were secret agents. And we would do that, and the problem is when you cut off all the lights in our basement, it just makes the basement pitch black. Well, young Adrian was afraid of the dark, and I didn't like it whenever everything went to complete darkness. So I would get about halfway across the basement, and my brother would already be across because he was older and better at this game than me, and I would get about halfway across the basement, and I would get scared. So what would I do? I would call out my brother's name, and when I would, he would go up to the landing that had the light switch, and he would cut the light on. Well, what would happen when he would go cut the light on? That light goes on, and all of the darkness in the room dissipates because he flipped the light on, and I can see what's in front of me. Every fear that I had was gone because I simply called his name, and when I would call his name, he would turn a light on, and the fear that was in front of me left. Here's the thing. I know the world that we're currently in, there is so much uncertainty, and there's so much fear that you have. I've even talked to a few students this past week who are just so worried about the uncertainty that's in our world right now. I want you to realize there is a name that displaces darkness. There is a name that is over and greater than fear, and that name is Jesus. We're going to see that in the book of John, chapter 18, in our time together. John chapter 18, Jesus is praying in the Garden of Gethsemane. And Jesus is done praying, and we know from other gospel accounts that Jesus has been praying and he sweated drops of blood because he's so anxious. And Jesus gets done praying, and when he's done, he looks up and he sees this group of soldiers approaching him, and they're being led by one of his own disciples named Judas. And something interesting happens in the Gospel of John in chapter 18. These guys approach Jesus, and they ask which of these men, because Jesus was with other disciples of his as well, they say, which of these men is Jesus? And he steps up, and he didn't say, hey guys, my name's Jesus, or hey, I'm Jesus Christ, I'm the one you're looking for. No, when they ask which one of you men is Jesus, he steps up and he says, I am. Now in the text, your English version of your text, it says, I am he, but that's not what Jesus said. Jesus stepped up and said, I am. He was stating his name. Well, you see, the name I am is the name of God that we learn all the way back in Exodus 3 when God is talking to Moses out of a burning bush. God says that his name is I am. So when Jesus stepped up in John 18 and they said, we're looking for Jesus. Which one of you is Jesus? And he steps up and says, I am. He's saying, I am the one true God. This is the one thing that got him crucified in the first place. But then something greater even happens. These battle-hardened soldiers who approach Jesus, when he says the name I am, they fall flat on their face. You see, when Jesus says his name, this group of men, because he states his name, and his name is more powerful than any name, they fall flat on their face. But there's something else that's so cool that happens in this text. Look at John 18:4. Then Jesus, knowing all that would happen to him, came forward and said to them, whom do you seek? And when Jesus said his name, they fell flat on their faces, which shows that when the powers of darkness came at Jesus and his disciples, he simply spoke his name and darkness fell. At the name of Jesus, the darkness fell right to its face. This shows us a couple of things I want you to realize. The first one is this: Jesus is never surprised. Notice what it says, then Jesus, knowing all that would happen. Jesus is never caught off guard by whatever it is that you face. And here's what you need to know. If your trust is in Jesus, your trust is in the one person who is never caught off guard. He's never surprised. Something never catches him and he's like, oh, I didn't see that coming, he is never surprised. The second thing you need to know is this: Jesus displaces the darkness. There is one name that is above every name, and that is the name of Jesus. Students, this is what this means for you. When anxiety is beginning to creep in, you call out to I am. When you are depressed or depression is just gripping you, you call out to the one who is the great I am. When you feel worthless and you don't think like you're worth anything, you call out to Jesus who says, I am. When life is uncertain and you are worried and you are scared and you don't know what's going to happen next and you want clarity, Jesus says, I am. You call out to the I am. And don't miss this. How do we know that Jesus will be with us through everything that we face? How do we know that? We see that in verse 8, in John 18:8. Jesus answered them. He said, I told you that I am he. So if you seek me, let these men go. Jesus trades places with his disciples. Realize this. Jesus, the sinless Son of God, voluntarily gave himself up to die for in the place of sinful humanity. But Jesus didn't stay dead. No, Jesus came back from the grave showing that he had power over darkness, so that we know this: Jesus gives himself as the substitute for sinful people. Jesus gives himself as the substitute. He stood strong, and in the face of his darkest hour, by facing the cross of God's punishment, this shows us that since Jesus stood strong in his darkest hour, he isn't going to back down from our current darkness. If Jesus stood strong in his darkest hour, he's not going to back down in our darkest hour. There will be some scriptures that you're going to see on the YouTube page or the link to the YouTube page or the Instagram page and the Facebook page that I want you to commit to memory. There'll be some scriptures that'll be posted there along with this sermon. I want you to trust them and read them and commit them to memory over the next few weeks. But I want you really to know this, that call out to the great I am. The one who spoke and the universe came into existence. The one who speaks and darkness has to flee. Call out to him. Because we know that if Jesus didn't give up on you in his darkest hour, he's not going to give up on us in our darkest hour. So my challenge for you is this: when you face doubt, when you face uncertainty, when you face fear, call out to the I am. Because his name is greater, his name is more powerful, and there is no other name in the universe that can touch the name of Jesus. Call out to the I am.